We have to teach all of our Senn students how to listen to each other if there's a difference of opinion, to still hear that person. You don't have to change your opinion, but you have to be able to hear the other opinion. The Florida shooting was tragic, and it's happened way too many times in the United States. Our response as a school is to just continue to support the students and the entire community that are dealing with such a tragedy, and to continue to work with everybody here in the building so that we can process our own feelings about what the magnitude of this loss means to us as a community. It absolutely has led us to reassess many of our policies and procedures, to look at who we are as a community in support of each other, so that we can avoid anything like this happening nationwide and especially locally. I think our next steps as a building is to continue the conversation. I think for too long the conversation around school shootings has been primarily at the level of adults processing it, and I don't know how and when we've given voice to students to process it. So I think my role as an administrator and our role as adults in the building is to give Senn students the space to process what they're feeling. Something I was talking with a freshman the other day who was really interested in walking out, and then some other freshmen who were very, very angry, and they said, but we can't do anything, we can't vote. And one thing we started talking about was, yes, you can't vote right now, right? You're 14, you can't vote. But in 3 years, 4 years, you can. And I think it's important that we really look at the people we're electing and the people who are currently in office, because if they want to stay in office, you will be those voters, right? And so how do we start finding the right people, not just to put into office, but who are currently in office, who can hear from you, who can help change these laws? I think when we look both as a city and then we look statewide, our laws are rather strict when it comes to gun violence. For a while we had a lot of support around mental illness. Those are the two issues that we're targeting. I think some of that waned a little bit, but it's getting a little bit better. But I think really the work of Senn students now is to figure out nationally who are the people we need to talk to, because we can't just isolate as a city, we can't just isolate ourselves as a community, right? We need to be able to really look at what is the impact nationally and who are the people who can change those national laws. I can't tell you how you're feeling, right? And I'm only going to respond to what students are saying to me. There's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of students who are scared, and I get that. So I'm trying to create as many opportunities for those conversations. So one that's always been in place, of course, is student government, so bringing concerns to student government. We've started the Principal Advisory Committee, but then on a less formal way, being aware of the student movements that are happening. I think the most effective movements are often those that are grassroots and student-led. So there's a lot of things that I am trying to stand back on. Let students know that I support you, I support your voice, I support what you feel you need to do that's going to keep you safe, but at the same time to be heard. And there's a lot of adults in this building who I think are comfortable with those conversations.
Obviously with these incidents, it brings a lot of security concerns and safety concerns, and it puts a lot of people on a hinge. And you know, with the recent reinforcement of our not new IDs, but
yeah, it's always been a policy.
Wearing IDs again around our necks, like how important do you think that is, and how important do you think the students should take it?
So I think it's important. I think it's a policy that's been in place. It has not been enforced by security, by teachers, by me. But I think it's a valid policy. Everybody in this building has an ID. Kids use it to enter the building. There's no reason why we shouldn't wear it all day long. I had originally, some of my thinking around IDs was, you know, we should know all our students. We shouldn't need IDs to do that. But it's bigger than that. When you go to an office, when you go anywhere downtown, when you're in college, you're expected to have your IDs at all time and wear them. Maybe not so much in college, but definitely at work, right? Like everybody who works downtown, anyone who works in an office building has a visible ID. We should be no exception to that. Another policy that I know I fight with kids in the hallway all the time is hoods being up. It's a safety issue. Wearing a hat, wearing a hood hides your face. It allows for people to hide if they want to hide. And so I think for safety issues, the hoods have to be reinforced. It's pretty good. There's probably only a handful of kids where I see consistently wearing their hoods. So I'm going to work with them to maybe find some other thing they can do that would give them the comfort of a hood, but not be a hood. Safety measures that we're taking are things that were actually in place, and so the timing is great, but hopefully it'll make people feel a little bit more secure. So we have hired a additional security guard because we were down a security guard in the beginning of the year. So we've hired an additional security guard. We've also are in the process of upgrading all our cameras, and we will be adding alarms to all our doors. Something that I think we always thought was being addressed because of the number of security guards, but we have seen, and it's happened very, very rarely, but when it does happen, it does put everybody in this building at risk, is when students open the door and let somebody in, not through the main entrance. If kids, if somebody decides to leave the building and come back in through door 10, that's a problem, and that puts the risk and the safety of everybody in this building at risk. I think we have an advantage at Senn where we have a really strong global curriculum, right? Like our MYP curriculum, our IB philosophy, the mission of our building is to create global-minded citizens, right? And I think our curriculum reflects that. Some is a little bit stronger than others, but there are specific subjects and specific areas throughout your education here at Senn where this conversation is absolutely valid because it's tied directly to what you're learning, right? So U.S. history right now, they're talking about race, right? Eventually that conversation will lead to current events, and current events will naturally lead to gun violence. And it'll be talked about in ways that are very much grounded in literature, right? And so I think what's important and what our job as educators is during this conversation is to not just is to hear your opinions and know that you have opinions, but to make sure that you're informed on everyone's opinions. And that's the tricky part, and I think that's part of what we talk about when we watch the political shows, or we hear, the right isn't listening to the left and the left isn't listening to the right. We have to teach all of our Senn students how to listen to each other if there's a difference of opinion, to still hear that person. You don't have to change your opinion, but you have to be able to hear the other opinion. Within that, we have to also continue to ground that in what the larger conversation is. So what's the literature? What's the curriculum, right? Where is this all coming from? Is there a reason why, why do we have the laws that we have when it comes to gun control? There's history in that, right? So it makes sense in our curriculum. So working through that and making sure that everybody has a right to form their opinion, but it's the most informed that it could be or can be. Because ultimately, you're the ones, everybody who's graduating from Senn, you're not just going to be the voters for the next 50 years, 60 years, 100 years. You're going to be the policymakers. You're going to be the people who are helping to change these laws, hopefully once and for all, right? And so with that being said, you need to be as informed as possible because you really are the people who are going to go out there and make this difference.